did want to check in real quick on week 9. I wanted to see how did it go using one of those mental health interventions, whether it was anything, from the ACT section or, what mental health intervention did you guys use last week and how did it go? I'd like to hear from pretty much everybody if possible. Just want to check in and see how it's going for you guys.
I can go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, my hair is a mess. I'm on PTO, so it's a lazy day. I didn't use the ACT, but when I was doing like the progress notes to submit the 5, I did go back and like redo the education slides that we used.
Okay.
I got a new client and her diagnosis was paranoid schizophrenia and she really didn't understand it. And she kept repeating like she's different from society because of it. And I was like, your diagnosis doesn't make you different, makes you, you're unique. But we went over it and I utilized it's called ADAA. It's association of like anxiety and depression as well to better help her understand her depressive lows. So we used a lot of like websites and worksheets and yeah.
Okay. So, did you implement anything that we talked about in class last week as far as like the thought diffusion or any of those?
Yeah, I
ACT
actually
type
did use
things?
that, the thought diffusion to help her kind of not have those negative thoughts. I
Okay.
explained to her, being consistent with negative thoughts is going to kind of like deteriorate your mental state. So we came up with, and I also found a positive, it's like a I can worksheet as well that I used with it too. Like I can overcome this. Like I can, do sessions even if they're scary and stuff like that.
Okay. Great. All right. Glad to hear you put some of that into practice for mental health interventions. That's great. A couple comments in the chat. Andrew used it, Kirsten used it, but didn't get all the way through that. And that's totally fine. Again, if something takes more than 1 week, that's totally normal. And I'm glad to hear that you're matching what your client needs as far as pacing when it comes to their session. So that's fine, Kirsten. Samantha used it. It went well. Jessica did the thought diffusion kind of Xing out technique. Okay, cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I love that one. That's very visual. Madeline used cycle of anxiety. Okay, process there. And oh, wow. Vietnam veteran after avoiding. Wow. Oh my gosh, Madeline, please, can you tell us a little bit more? That's huge. A lot of times veterans, not to stereotype, but it is common for them not to want to share anything about war.
Yeah.
What was that like just for you?
Yeah, so for this one, I've been working with him for about 2 years. And so, especially like now that he's finally starting to bring that up after working like 2 years to kind of get him to like move away from avoiding
Yeah.
a lot of the problems, just because it was stopping him from like interacting with other residents. Like his previous roommate who passed away recently was also a Vietnam veteran, but he was very open to talking about everything that was done there. And it would make my client super angry almost, because he was like, I know what I did over there. I know what happened over there. Not proud of it. Like, especially the reaction that people gave them when they came back from being in Vietnam. Like, so it was really hard for him to like interact with others because other people were more comfortable with discussing stuff of like their past and the time frame. So that cycle of anxiety really helped him with like less avoidance. And he's starting to realize that avoiding it has made his symptoms a lot worse.
Yeah. Wow. That's huge. That is a big step for him to be open to talking about that. Especially, it sounds like he was avoiding it so hard until recently. So you guys must have a very good working relationship for him to trust you to talk about those kind of very personal
Yeah, I
things.
think he also like he's being put on hospice, so I think like the end of life kind of brings out a lot of hidden feelings across the time. So I think now that he's starting to decline, being put on hospice and everything. I think that was probably why
Yeah,
he's starting to open up more about these things, just because a lot of people don't want to kind of end their life with that stuff on their mind.
absolutely. Wow. Well, good work on your part for sure. At first, getting that relationship established where he feels comfortable to share that kind of stuff for you, and then kind of pushing him a little bit. Did you feel like you were pushing him maybe a little even, or maybe encouraging is a
Yeah, I
better word?
think
Challenging.
it definitely started with, he was like, "Oh, like, no, I'm fine. Like, I don't have any anxiety going on." I'm like, like, do you though? And
Yeah.
I was like, like, I've noted, I kind of mentioned, like, with his past roommate, I was like, hey, like, I noticed anytime he brought up these past memories and everything, like, you would be super angry about it. And that just kind of like rolled the ball for the whole conversation.
Oh, that's great. Good job. Excellent. Glad to hear that, even if that was a little challenging for you and challenging for him, the benefit that kind of came from talking about the things they probably hadn't talked about in a really long time. So that's awesome. Great work. Okay, good. I'm glad to hear other people also found it at least helpful to start it. If you're not done with it, that's totally fine. I encourage you to follow up, um, you know, and come back to it. It doesn't have to be, those activities don't have to be completed in one session. You could certainly spread them out as your client needs over several weeks. That's totally fine. All right, awesome. Let's go ahead and get it then to week 10. And this week is empowerment, just to kind of refresh your memory of what empowerment is. I know you did it in series 1, but what you're doing as a TBS when it comes to empowerment is supporting, encouraging, challenging, maybe sometimes pushing your client to more positively impact their environment. I know that's kind of a vague statement, but it could include a lot of different things. But what the end result is a more positive outcome for your client, and that they had the impact on their life, or they took the steps to make those changes. So kind of giving them the power to make changes, to be different, to confront anxiety provoking topics like being in a war, being in Vietnam. That's really what empowerment is. So we've talked about it last series. I just gave you a real quick intro just to refresh your memory about it. So I want to kind of put it back on you guys. This is week 10 of series 2. So I feel like you can maybe expand a little bit on why is it important to empower your clients as they're receiving TBS? What have you found? What's been your experience in encouraging, supporting your clients to be or act differently? Either unmute and share, or excuse me, Stacy and I will keep an eye on the chat here. Andrew, I see you're unmuted. Did you want to share about empowerment and why it's important?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
You called me, right? Okay.
Yes, yes, Andrew.
Yeah. For the empowerment, like I got run into quite a few people that they don't feel empowered there because they don't have any independence, and that's the biggest thing.
Yeah,
Talk to people all the time, and they want to feel like they have some control over their treatment, their
sure.
future, and
Absolutely.
encourage them a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Just based on the situation they're in, they may already not feel very empowered. So anything you can do to increase that would be very helpful. Absolutely. Kirsten says kind of the same thing. They can have some kind of control over their lives. Madeline says if they don't feel confident, they may not feel like they are able to feel better and achieve their goals. Yes. Especially people who are very depressed, they may not be able to see anything positive about the future or see any abilities that they have to make any positive changes to their life. So until they are able to do that and their symptoms are better, that's a great place for a TBS to come in and do exactly what we're talking about, is empowering. Okay. Great. Anybody else want to share before we go on? Oh, there's one more in the chat. Oh, a couple more in the chat. Boosting their self-esteem. Yes, we're going to talk a lot about self-esteem today. So yeah, that's great that you made that connection. Self-esteem is very much connected to empowerment, and a lot of our activities today will be about self-esteem. Very good. Thank you for making that connection for us. Let's get some other whys that we kind of came up with when we came up with the curriculum, helping people to also be more invested in their treatment is something that we thought of. You're empowering them to reduce their GAD-7 scores. You're empowering them to leave their room a certain number of times to meet their objectives and meet their goals. So by empowering them to do that work can help them to be more invested and more engaged and more involved in their own treatment. So I don't know if anybody has noticed that, but that is another great reason to empower, is to increase engagement in treatment. Other empowerment wise, a great way to show them that they matter. Kind of like Andrew was describing, they may already feel unvalued. They may not feel appreciated. They might not feel like they have control over their situation. So that can be a part of building your therapeutic relationship with the client, is to empower them and establish rapport. So it also goes along with your relationship with the client for sure. So how do we do this? We'll get some of your hows shortly. So maybe start thinking of how you have empowered and be ready to share here in a minute. But here's just some things that we came up with when creating the curriculum. The first thing I would say that is empowering is to be respectful and non-judgmental in your relationship with your client. Building that relationship, kind of like we were discussing earlier, so that your client feels comfortable to discuss that trauma, to discuss that difficult situation, to discuss their feelings, their wants, and their needs to you is a huge part of empowering your client. Once they can do that with you, could they now do that with somebody else? You know, could they work up the skills to communicate their needs and their wants to somebody besides their TBS specialist, somebody in their own personal life, maybe. And then lastly, some other things we thought of as to how we do it kind of on a regular basis is just focusing on strengths and abilities. That's why that SNAP assessment is done so many times throughout treatment. If you think about it, we do it at the diagnostic assessment and the psych eval, then we do it in the treatment plan, and we do it at discharge, but it's also a great intervention to do other times as well. So focusing on strengths and abilities is very empowering, and then supporting the client to kind of follow through on getting their needs met, or to use those strengths to try something different or to be different is really a great way to incorporate empowerment as well as the SNAP assessment into your work with your clients. So hopefully that got you thinking of how you have empowered your client or clients in the past. Here's 3 that we just kind of thought about when we came up with the curriculum, but I want to know, how have you actually done this? You can either unmute or go ahead and put it in the chat. How did you accomplish that?
I did it like with shining a light on their successes, because there's always like they have medical issues, and in the facilities are a lot of things that they don't like, and sometimes they get so absorbed with all the negative things, and then or they only hear like the big good things. And then sometimes when you make them aware of the successes, even when they are small, then it really makes them feel so proud. And then they are like, oh, I actually did do that. And then they feel so proud of themselves. And then the small thing is actually not a small thing. It can sometimes be a big thing.
That's true. That's a good point. Absolutely. No, I love everything that you said, honey. Sometimes it could be a symptom of their depression to just not be able to see the positive things, or maybe it just takes an outside person such as yourself to see and to recognize, like you were saying, even small accomplishments, especially since you're probably seeing them on a weekly, if not more frequent basis than that. So you as TBS are in a unique position to see those, you know, quote unquote, small accomplishments, but then give them that empowerment that wasn't really a small accomplishment. You weren't leaving your room at all 3 months ago. This week, you left your room twice, you know, for example. So that's a great point. Thank you, honey. A couple other are in the chat. Praise them on an achievement they have done. Yeah, they may have nobody else in their life giving them that positive feedback. You honestly may be the literally only person, like Madeline is saying, giving them compliments so they hear positive things that other people maybe see about them and they can believe in themselves. Yes, love it. Jessica says, continuous support, always showing up even on their bad days. Had a client that has always been very short and did not open up. Now, finally, after 1 year, they have begun to open up about past trauma and not being able to trust anyone. Yeah, exactly. So you being consistent and kind of like Andrew was saying, showing encouragement can be a great way to empower their clients. A couple other ones. Kirsten, done this for a client when it came to overeating and eating things that they should be eating. Okay. And Seneca says, having my clients embrace their positive and negative side. Yeah, kind of giving them more balance, a more realistic view of themselves as far as what you see in them. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate everybody's contributions there. Those are all really great ways to empower your clients. Absolutely. But for some more information, let's just get this quick video for a nice overview one more time of what is empowerment. It's about 5 minutes long. Let me know if you can't hear it for some reason, but I believe I did share our sound, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
So what is empowerment? In our research, we have found if you ask a number of people this question, you will find that their answers can differ greatly. However, does that mean they are all wrong, or are they all right? Empowerment in recent years has been one of those buzzwords that is thrown around in business and organisations to empower employees. But is that all empowerment is, and what does it mean? Why is empowerment such a big word? The word empower is often used to describe the act of giving someone more confidence or control. As such, the word empower is a popular choice when naming organisations, companies or products. But does this mean empowerment is strictly for organisations, products, companies, or can it be applied to individuals as well? Surely if we are empowering our employees to feel strong and reliable and responsible for certain tasks in our business, then it is not unlikely to assume that empowerment extends one's individual life as well. So what is the difference between empowering people in an organisation versus an individual? When it comes to empowering employees for an organisation, it essentially means granting employees the autonomy to assume a more active and responsible role. This is accomplished by strengthening their sense of effectiveness as well as by sharing power, information and responsibility to manage their own work as much as possible. Whereas empowering an individual is more about personal empowerment. This means taking control of your life. True personal empowerment requires you to set meaningful goals to identify what you want from life and then take action to achieve those goals and have more impact over the world around you. People who are not empowered tend to lack control over what they do. So what is empowerment? It is the degree of autonomy and self-determination in people and in communities. This enables them to represent their interests as much as possible in a responsible and self-determined way, acting on their own authority. You could make the case that empowerment is made up of terms like independence, trust, participation, accountability, and responsibility. Authority or power given to someone to do something. So overall, empowerment promises more participation, responsibility, and independence. So what does it mean to empower someone? Empower means putting power into, and it can also mean bringing energy and enthusiasm out of. So the first step in empowering people is to refrain from doing anything that disempowers them or reduces their energy and enthusiasm for what they are doing. Arguably, being empowered can lead to better health. When you are self-empowered, you can get a lot of meaningful things done. In turn, you can become confident in yourself and healthier in mind and body. So all this sounds good. So are there any disadvantages of empowering people? In terms of business, while it can increase an employee's morale, the increased risks are: it takes more time to make important decisions, there may be decreased efficiency or productivity, it creates a blurred chain of command. In terms of personal empowerment, there are times when empowering someone who is not ready for it can backfire. They may not be good at making decisions. But is empowerment one of those things that we should strive to achieve within our organisation or as individuals? Or is there something else that we need to consider? A well-known American psychologist, Frederick Herzberg, once wrote, It's the job of the manager not to light the fire of motivation, but to create an environment to let each person's personal spark of motivation blaze. Instead of thinking about how we can empower people, maybe we should think about how can we, as the manager of the firm, better understand what our employees really want. How can we make it clear what they do matters? How can we uncover what makes meaningful, interesting work for that person? And how can we illustrate what good enough looks like? These are some of the key questions we need to consider in general when talking about a business. Empowering someone may be a good idea in theory, but we don't want it to turn into a negative in practice. So what is empowerment? Empowerment as an underlining goal may be something that's important, but good leadership is really what allows empowerment of others thrive. Thank you for listening to our video scribe. For more topics that you would like us to cover.
All right, so I know that was a little bit more about empowering employees, but we kind of did that for a reason, because I kind of want to start today with these activities, having you do them for yourself. And then once you have done a lot of these empowerment activities for yourself, I think that gives you a better perspective to then support your clients to do them. So the reason we were kind of focusing on employee motivation is I wanted you to reflect for a minute on what empowers you, or how does maybe your supervisor or your coworkers, what is it that they do that helps you to feel empowered? So we're going to bring the next couple activities kind of back to ourselves. But as you were watching that video, did anything come up for anybody as far as, oh yeah, that's something that motivates me when my supervisor does it, or that's something when a coworker says it to me, it's empowering when I get a compliment? Did that remind you of anything as far as your own personal work life? If you'd like to unmute and share, that'd be great, or you can put it in the chat. But let's look at ourselves first, and then we'll go forward to helping clients be empowered. Anybody have any reactions to that video? Let you guys finish typing if you're chatting. I can start, get you guys started. For me personally, I know even just the smallest, email from a supervisor with positive feedback can empower me personally to do better or to be different. It doesn't have to cost any money. Usually it's just a sentence or two. It could be an email, could be in person, could be over Teams. It could be even a little emoji, a little thumbs up emoji. Those are all very small, encouragers that me personally work. So think about, also with your clients, like you guys mentioned, giving compliments. You guys mentioned giving both positive and, negative observations, or if you want to think about it that way, giving a more balanced, realistic feedback to your client. To me, it's kind of similar to what we experience at work. Oh, great. Michael, what does Michael say? Supervisor corrects me. I can grow and get better. Okay. Yeah. So that growth, that empowerment part is what he's talking about. Seneca says, building a good connection with supervisors uplifts her, because then they notice when she goes the extra mile. Yeah, you have to know the person. You have to know their baseline to know when they've improved or when they've declined. Madeline says, always feel better after my supervisor tells me I did a good job with handling something, because sometimes I doubt my supervisor's abilities or get extra hard on myself about small things. Yeah, because that doesn't have to be extensive. It could just be a comment. It could be a quick email, a quick statement, even a thumbs up. I think is enough of an encourager for a lot of people. Okay, so like I said, the next couple activities, we're going to have you think about these activities first for yourself, and I think that helps us to implement them better once we have done it ourselves. We can be a better support that way. So we'll start with healthy relationship building. Good communication, active listening, all of these things kind of go along with healthy relationship building. All of these are good skills. to teach your client or to work on with your client as you're helping them empower them in another relationship. So in a lot of ways, you're kind of using the professional working relationship that you have with the client as a way for them to practice active listening, a way to practice those I statements, to practice setting those boundaries that they can then take and be empowered to use with other people. You know, I was successful at communicating in a role play with Kim, how I feel about sharing things with my roommate. Now I'm ready to go do that relationship building work with my roommate because I have practiced it first with my TBS. So let's talk about, you know, healthy relationship building and how you can model a lot of those skills or role model a lot of those skills with your clients one-on-one, and then empower them to take those skills outside of the TBS relationship. Talking about friendships. I think it was, I forget who it was actually, who said, you know, being on time, showing up, sort of being trustworthy yourself, can influence your client's skills and in their friendships. Beneficial outcomes of that are shown to be improved physical and mental health, enhanced quality of life, greater community connections, kind of all those things that Andrew was describing. People may be down about and not having hope about the future, but if you can have them have a couple good relationships, friendships, that may improve the quality of their life for sure. But your clients are going to need your support. You know, there's a reason why they haven't done this yet. There's a mental health reason why they haven't left their room, or there's a mental health reason why they have anxiety about starting those conversations. So they may need your support to do these things, to first practice them with you and then try them out on someone else, developing relationships, going to activities. Maybe you go with them the first couple times and then they're able to go on their own or to go with a friend that they have found. Really, once formed, your role then is to support them to maintain those friendships. So even though they may have this new friend, your work still is not done. You may be supporting them on learning communication skills or identifying activities to keep that relationship or that friendship going. So there's always, you know, kind of an angle that TBS can support when it comes to empowerment and when it comes to things like healthy relationships. So think also of paid and unpaid relationships. Consider program or staff supports that you may be linking your client with or empowering them to link themselves with. You know, maybe, hey, client, I've heard you talk about chair yoga, you know, 4 times over the past 2 weeks. You know, what do we need to do to get you to go to chair yoga? Or do we need to talk to the person that teaches chair yoga with some questions? So that's where you can empower clients to kind of take that next step, whether it's with paid or unpaid support. So think of both for sure. So to help your client build relationships, we have this shared qualities relationship building handout. And I am going to ask you guys to take just a couple minutes and to kind of do it for yourself. So let me make it big. You also should have received it in an email from Stacy earlier in the week. But for yourself, think about you and one other person, a friend, coworker, and we're going to identify things in all of these areas that could lead to improving that relationship or lead to strengthening that relationship, or maybe even expanding, making even more friends. So think of you and one other person, places you would like to visit or things that you would like to visit, movies, books, or music that you have in common. What do you have fun doing? What are you good at as friends? What are your weaknesses maybe as friends? Unique things you have in common, qualities that you both value in others, and then maybe 3 goals that you have shared for the future. So I'll give a couple minutes. I'll maybe put it back at the beginning. And then in a minute or 2, I'll scroll down. If you just want to jot them down, or if you have the PDF, you can fill out either one of those is fine. Or if you're brave, go ahead and put some of this in the chat. That would be great. Somebody just let me know when you're ready for me to scroll here. Give you about 1 more minute or so. And like for a couple of people to share here in a second. Okay. All right, I see some in the chat. Let's see what we got going in the chat. Brittany and her friends would like to visit Greece, the Bahamas, or Jamaica. Awesome. Kat, 3 goals for the future: getting an MSW, traveling to Dubai, and wanting a house. Very good. So just some things came up with, goals that may have in common, maybe coping with anxiety, joining more activities, needing less help from staff. And then who knows, your imagination is your only limit when it comes to movies, books, and music that they all like, having fun doing things like, as friends, we're good at coloring, laughing, reading books. So remember, this is not something that you would necessarily be doing with your client, but you may want to fully explain all of those relationship skills that we just talked about earlier, and how this could help their client to continue those relationships or to continue those friendships. So this is something that your client would be doing with their friend. You may want to model or show them an example of what it may look like. They may not be able to come up with some of these things on their own. They may need you to remind them, hey, you told me you liked playing Uno, or you told me you like listening to jazz. So maybe you prep them for it, but ultimately it's going to be your client completing something like this with one of their friends. So you're empowering them to use those brainstorming skills. You're empowering them to remember these positive things that they're enjoying, to then do something like this with their friend. So just real quick, I want to see if you guys think this would be helpful, or if you see clients struggling with activities that don't cost money to engage in with their friends, or as ways to make friends. What do you guys think about the feasibility of doing this with a client, or supporting, empowering a client to do it with a friend? What do you guys think? Anybody out there think they might actually use this?
For some clients, I think it will be very hard to, because a lot of them, they don't have friends or no family, and so they're like in a facility all alone. And some people are like alone. So for some clients, this will be really hard to do.
Yeah, I agree. They may be working on the first parts of the relationship skills first, and then once they've made that friendship, able to go to the next step of doing something like this. Yeah, I agree. Anybody else think they might use this with a client, or have someone in mind that could benefit from doing something like this brainstorming activity? Okay. Oh, something in the chat. Sorry, a couple in the chat. Maybe I don't give you guys long enough to type. I'm sorry. Kristen, it would be challenging for one of her clients. Yeah, again, don't have friends and family. They will not leave their rooms. Somebody else thinks their clients would struggle with this, or not very social. Okay, that's fine. If that's where they are, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. That's where they are at the moment. But I would keep this maybe in a back pocket, or keep it in the back of your mind for when they maybe have made that friend, or they have established that relationship, to keep it going, to keep them interacting, to keep their interests, piqued in that other person. So this maybe is a next step, depending on where your clients are. So don't forget about it. Keep it in your back pocket for use later. Okay, so that's just one. Another topic that we want to talk about today really is how self-empowerment is entwined with self-esteem. So let's talk a little bit about what self-esteem is here in this video, and then 4 small habits to improve self-esteem. And then we'll check in on the other side. This might be a great video not only for yourself, but maybe to share with the client if this is something that they're working on.
Hey Psych2Goers, do you have low self-esteem? Your self-esteem is a culmination of your physical self-image, accomplishments, capabilities, and perceived success. In short, it's your opinion of yourself. Some of us are blessed to have an environment that fosters high self-esteem. Others are not so fortunate. But despite unfortunate circumstances or events, you can cultivate high self-esteem. Think of the protagonist who had a difficult childhood or a rough start in life. Despite the trials they faced, they were able to forge ahead. Hopefully these few tips can help you believe in yourself again. Number 1, stop comparing yourself to others. Sometimes comparisons can be helpful. Using them as a template for improvement can inspire you to make changes. Then again, sometimes they are a way for you to deconstruct yourself and discover all the things that you think are wrong with you. According to an article in Psychology Today, written by physician Dr. Bailey, we can remind ourselves that people's outsides can't be compared to our insides. This is because people can curate their social media versions of their lives, and they can do the same with their public lives. You might have experienced being shocked when a couple appeared happy and solid in a relationship until one of them announced their breakup. Of course, we wish others well, but remember that you don't actually know what goes on behind closed doors when their lives make you feel bad about your own. Number 2, overcome perfectionism. I know you're just trying to do your best and work hard to achieve your goals, but how can we know if we've crossed the line? Have you been experiencing signs of procrastination, restlessness, being motivated by fear, and especially low self-esteem? Well, these are signs of a perfectionist. Despite what social media tries to portray as a perfect life, creating one for yourself can lead to maladaptive rumination and deterioration of mental health. Instead of achieving more, you may undergo more setbacks than you desire. According to Oregon Counseling, we can take steps to overcome perfectionism through tendency awareness, allowing room for mistakes, focusing on meaning over perfectionism, and setting reasonable goals for ourselves. Number 3, figure out what you're good at and develop it. How do your abilities and self-esteem go hand in hand? Well, your sense of purpose will increase. When that happens, your self-esteem grows when you demonstrate to yourself your ability and competencies. When you gain deeper fulfillment and inspire others around you, you can improve your self-esteem. So how do you identify your abilities? Try listing down what you love doing and your previous accomplishments. It can be daily blogging, baking, cooking, or even science experiments that you did at a science fair. Diving into activities that allow you to show off or discover your talents is a start to figuring out your strengths, which bring you confidence and purpose in life. So tell us, what do you enjoy doing the most in your life? Come on, don't be shy. Let's hear it out in the comments. And number 4, focus on what you can change and the things that are in your control. Dwelling on your worries can be a potent poison that whittles down your resolve. It can trap you in an illusion that makes you believe that progress or anything remotely positive is impossible. Instead of focusing on these negative thoughts, try focusing on what you can change. One way to overcome this is to label your thoughts as productive worry and unproductive worry, to see things from a clearer perspective. When you know the difference between productive and unproductive worrying, you can start to manage your worries, which eventually helps you feel more confident in yourself, your choices, and your abilities. So what's the difference, you may ask? Well, to keep it simple, unproductive worry imagines all sorts of unlikely outcomes and focuses on the what ifs and worst case scenarios without any clear solutions. While productive worry helps you solve a problem or resolve a situation and explores appropriate ways of finding solutions to problems. Do you think you'll try some of these tips? Remember, baby steps are the way to go. It may seem scary to start, but just remember to be kind to yourself and let yourself make mistakes along the way. Self-esteem is necessary to move forward in life. The moment you stop believing in yourself, you abandon hope of success. So please do not give up on yourself. If you struggle with your self-esteem, we encourage you to seek professional help. It's a big deal, and you deserve to believe in yourself. If you found this video helpful, like and share it with friends that might find insight in it too.
Okay. So yeah, that would be a great video to share with a client if you're trying to teach or do psychoeducation. on the topic of self-empowerment. And a lot of times, self-esteem might be the first thing to work on before we go on to empowering. So that might be the first thing that we're addressing is how do they feel about themselves? What is contributing to their positive self-esteem? What's contributing to their negative self-esteem before they're ready to maybe have the confidence, before they're ready to start actually being empowered and taking actual behavioral steps. So that's a great video for a couple different reasons and could be used in a couple different ways. I think it's a good overview of self-esteem and a good overview of what the next handout is about, which is about taking steps to improve our self-development, if you want to think about it that way. So self-development, self-improvement is sort of what comes after, developing that self-esteem. It is improving sort of one's character by one's own efforts. So what steps is somebody taking to feel more capable or to have a better perception of themselves? It's really the quest to make ourselves better in any and every facet of life. And TBS can certainly support a client on meeting their goals, understanding kind of what self-improvement is, and maybe even breaking it down into steps that are more manageable or steps that are more able to be tackled one at a time. So I think that's where TBS comes in, is with the planning, with the brainstorming, with the breaking it down, or maybe even, again, giving that reflection back to clients, helping them not to fixate on what they perceive are flaws, but encouraging them to focus on their strengths and their accomplishments and not seeing it as what is something that is wrong with them or something that they have as a flaw, but something they could just improve upon or something they could just be doing a little bit better. This can kind of help have your client to not dwell on those negative things, realize the positive, and then realize what control they have over making those improvements. So definitely a lot of great skills TBS can use in this instance to help a client to improve, work on their personal development, have higher self-esteem. So one of the handouts that we sent to you earlier is this how can I improve worksheet? And I do have an example of one filled out that we'll go ahead and take a look at. But what this worksheet does is helps your clients to establish what steps are needed in order to achieve a particular goal, helping them to have more ownership over how they can improve their situation, how they can reach their goals. So let's take a couple looks at a screenshot. So this particular person is noticing a positive, or maybe with the support of their TBS specialist, is noticing a positive that they are using some of their coping skills. Maybe they realize the ones that they have learned, maybe they're not using all of them. So related to that, what they need to improve is using my coping skills all the time and in any environment. So maybe they're really good at doing that deep breathing in their room by themselves, but what they're struggling with is maybe being empowered enough to do the deep breathing or to do other skills in a more public environment when they are still feeling anxiety. So maybe that's what they need to be working on, or maybe to use it without prompts. My goal is to be able to use my coping skills independently. That's a great goal. So here's where TBS can come in and helping them brainstorm what they can do specifically, what actual steps are they taking to reach their goal, practicing those deep breathing or whatever those skills are that they're working on in session with you or with other people they're working with. The next step might be to practice independently, more on my own. And then ultimately, the goal is to use those skills where they're experiencing the anxiety, whether that anxiety is at the grocery store, down the hall, in the bathroom, wherever they are experiencing that symptom, they are now empowered because they have practiced it with you, they have practiced it on their own, and they have that positive experience using those skills. Now they're able to do it in other environments and not just maybe alone. And then we have a specific date down here, making it very concrete, making it very clear that they need to be working on these in order to achieve it by that particular date. So it's very simple, but it's also very powerful to write these things down. It's one thing to be thinking about, oh, I need to be doing this, or I should be doing that. It's a whole other thing to really write it down and then start keeping yourself accountable, or to remind yourself, I need to be doing this more often. So there is a lot of power in actually writing things down, seeing it on the page, hanging it up, versus just kind of having vague thoughts of I need to be different, or I know I need to use my coping skills, but I'm not. this is kind of the next step of actually taking the steps, reminding yourselves of the steps, and again, holding yourself accountable for actually doing them. So that's just one example. That's an example of what you might want to share with your client. Like, hey, this is what one client came up with. You know, what could we work on with you to improve, naming a specific goal and then also specific action steps. Because really you're helping your clients to increase their self-empowerment, taking control of their own life. You hear us say it all the time. We're always working towards discharge. We're always working ourselves out of a job. You know, you're not always going to be able to be there to support your clients. So how could they start taking control and doing those things for themselves, making positive decisions based on what they want and what their needs are? All part of TBS for sure. Oh, there's something to check the chat real quick. I don't want to forget about that. Oh, Madeline, you have shown your clients that video. That's great. I'm so glad to hear that. That's awesome. Okay, so Madeline gives that video some recommendations. Love to hear it. Perfect. So here's just some other kind of tips, how to help your clients achieve self-empowerment, supporting them to know themselves, supporting them to maybe make a list of their strengths, make a list of their accomplishments. With your support, you may need to remind them of what their strengths and their accomplishments are. Reminding your clients that once they have developed this kind of self-awareness and they know what their strengths and they know what their abilities and their accomplishments are, this can help them to, again, have more control, take charge of their actions, take charge of their emotions. They kind of know where they are and they know where they want to be going, kind of using that worksheet maybe as a guide, the what can I improve worksheet as a guide. But where you can also support your client along the way is helping them identify their goals, what means the most to them, what aligns with their values, and using SMART goals. This should be a very quick review of SMART goals. You should all know what SMART goals are, but just in case you forgot, S stands for specific. So what specifically is the client doing or not doing? Make it very clear. Measurable. How often are they doing it? How many times a day? How many times a week? Is it achievable? Is it within their reach? Is it something that they could potentially accomplish? Realistic? Does it make sense for what their skills are, what their abilities are? And time specific. First of all, what is the goal date that we want to accomplish this by? But also, how many times a day, how many times a week are they doing those steps that you've identified along the way to help them get to the end result, to help them achieve that goal? So hopefully that was a real quick overview. Here it is on the PowerPoint for when you go to do your quiz: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound or time specific. So just another option, another way to empower is to use this idea of what's called a power recall. And this worksheet really walks you through it. This kind of describes the idea of self-efficacy in psychology, which means that individuals can remember and can recall past experiences where they felt powerful or where they felt capable or where they felt they accomplished what they set out to do. So by remembering this moment of personal power and getting specific about how they felt, what happened, how did they accomplish it, this can increase the likelihood that your client takes control of their present circumstances and does it again. Almost like you guys were talking about reminding your client, oh, you were successful at going to bingo last Thursday. Remember how powerful you felt. Remember how proud you were of yourself. Maybe you can use that same feeling to motivate them to go to chair yoga this week or whatever the next goal is that they have for themselves. So it's remembering past successes and kind of building on it and making a choice, making a plan on how to do it again. So here's just an example of what it might look like. I'll read it so you can see what the directions are. Think about a time. You're going to support your client to think about a time when they could control if someone else got something, or a time when they could help someone. When did they last feel powerful? When was the time they felt proud of themselves? Even just the act of thinking back to that time where they were in control can help somebody to be motivated to take action again. It's kind of what is called mindset priming. So remember you did it before, let's do it again. So here's just an example. A client felt powerful when I was able to voice to my doctor the new symptoms I had been feeling since I've been taking a new medication. So they were proud of themselves for doing that. They felt good about advocating for themselves and speaking up. So what happened? Not only were they proud of themselves, but they noticed that their doctor was proud of them for speaking up. They felt powerful. They were able to voice what their experience is on their own, maybe without support from their staff. So how did they do that? There was some prep work that happened before the person spoke up to their doctor. Looks like they wrote what they were experiencing for side effects or symptoms in their journal. They talked to their staff. Maybe they role played with their staff. So it wasn't just a miracle that this happened. They prepared for it. They got ready for it to make sure that it happens, which I think even adds to the amount of pride that they feel. So they made that decision, again, empowering them again. You could positively reinforce them. You made the decision to talk to your doctor. You took the steps to advocate for yourself, and then help your client to identify, how did it feel? Take them back to that moment. How did it feel to speak up? This person says it felt good. It was great to voice this to my doctor all by myself. So there's that sense of independence in there. There's that sense of a job well done for the work that they did by writing in their journal, talking to their staff, and then acting on that decision. Also very powerful. So there's many chances in this one worksheet alone to positively reinforce that decision that they made, positively reinforce the practice, positively reinforce the work that they did, and positively reinforce them for having the courage to speak up in the moment. That's not always easy for people to do it, to act on it. So those were the interventions for this week. The power recall was one of them. Talking about SMART goals might be something you do with your client. You could provide psychoeducation about self-esteem. You could help them break down the steps on how they can improve. All of these would fall under the umbrella of empowerment. But we've also learned a lot of other activities that could also be falling under the umbrella of empowerment. So can you think of anything else that we've done in the past, either 9 weeks of series 2, or even if you want to think back to series 1, that's fine. Are there other things that we've learned in TBSU, or what handouts do you think could also be used to empower? And I'll give you guys a minute to think about that before we review a couple that we suggest could also be used for empowerment.
I think the circle of control is a good one too, because it empowers them to feel, they feel a lot of times out of control and no
Positive
power.
self-statement, yes.
Yeah.
Positive
And then all of a sudden they feel more in control.
Surroundings, advocacy, yes. You heard me say advocacy a couple times today. Very empowering to speak up for yourself, for sure. Absolutely. Goal exploration, yes. Yes, empowering somebody to identify what their goal is and then set steps to achieve it. Love it. All right, I'll give it just a little bit longer. Matrix, yes, the decisional balance matrix. Oh my gosh, thank you, Kat. Yes, what's good about changing? What's good about staying the same? What are the negatives about changing? What are the negatives about staying the same? That could be very empowering to help somebody see why it's important to make changes, or if they're not ready yet, that's fine. They're okay with the status quo. That's where they are too. All right, awesome. Anyone else? Before I just give you a couple suggestions of activities that could also be used with empowerment. Okay, there's a bunch. If you remember back to week 2 about achieving independence, we learned about goal exploration, goal breakdown, can also empower clients to set goals for themselves, and then help them to take the time to break down those goals to kind of support and encourage them to engage in actually meeting them. So that was week 2, achieving independence. Another one that's great for empowerment is the habit plan, empowering your client to develop new healthy habits to help them work towards their goals. Going along with that is safety behaviors. Habit plan was from week 1, safety behaviors was from week 6, crisis management. This could empower your clients to develop more healthy, safer ways to decrease their anxiety instead of avoiding it. So there's 2 other suggestions from week 1, ongoing assessment of needs, and week 6 is crisis management. We'll look at just one more slide, and really I would say any activity could be used to empower, but just some other suggestions would be setting boundaries, empowering your client to set boundaries with difficult people, and understand when feeling uncomfortable in a situation, it's okay to say no. Great way to empower. And then lastly, what we just talked about 5 seconds ago, power recall, reminding your clients of times when they were successful, were powerful, to revisit that, and then helping them to use that in the future. So for week 10, you can use any really activity that supports your client to be empowered. I would encourage you to try ones that we went over this week, as they are probably brand new to you, but really your homework is going to be to empower. I would say just about any activity could be used to empower. So real quick, let's look at what this would look like in documentation, maybe working on self-confidence, self-esteem, maybe doing some relationship work, and then how the client may respond. Got 2 examples here. Okay, example, client will engage in session by filling out her power recall activity with writer. That doesn't tell us very much at all. A little bit better, Tess was engaged during the session as evidenced by talking with writer on ways she can continue working on meeting her goals, engaged in an activity to build her self-esteem. Client described a way she felt powerful utilizing the power recall worksheet and was excited to start new ways to learn to build her self-esteem. What do you think about the second one? Is it okay? Could it be better? What might you add, or what might you do differently in that client response? Any suggestions for improvements? Anyone? Oh, something in the chat. Diagnosis. Yes, thank you. I don't really see any symptoms or diagnosis, so I would agree with that for sure. Someone else says, oh, specify the goals. Okay, yes. What specifically are those goals that she's working on? Love it. Okay, let's wrap this up real quick so we can talk about the final. For homework, okay, is Tess will continue to learn how to build healthy relationships with peers and staff. It's a little bit better. Tess will continue to be empowered to work on meeting her goals and developing healthy ways to continue to build her self-esteem. This client agreed to make a list of achievable goals and share with TBS at next session. Any suggestions how that could be a little bit better, or what you might change or do differently if this was your client? Anyone? Okay, I think what would make this better is why. What is her self-esteem building contributing to? Is it decreasing anxiety, decreasing depression, improving her social skills? And then I would just also add like a number. How many goals is she aiming to come up with? You know, what number are we looking at here? Okay, so I want to see if there's any questions about the final, if anybody needs anything before the final next week. Any final thoughts, questions, concerns? Okay, if you'd rather talk one-on-one, I'll hang out here for a few minutes, and I think Stacy may hang out for a few minutes. Otherwise, this is week 10. You guys are done with series 2 at least. All you have left is the final and those notes to turn in. Congratulations, great job. I'll hang out here for a minute. Otherwise, that's all I have for you guys for today. Brittany did have a question about the raise. So once we have your final grade and all of your notes that have been submitted, we'll do one final productivity check. And then once the productivity check has been complete and you are meeting productivity, that's when the pay raise will go into effect. And usually, or Ann or Gabby will usually send out an email letting you know the date that would go into effect. But a couple more things left to do. Got to still do the final, turn in the notes, have the meeting, and then do that last productivity check before that can take effect. But good question. All right, well, thank you guys. I hope you all have a good week, and I'll see you in your final.